Hey guys, welcome back to the video. I'm Luke, an ACA qualified accountant, having passed all 15 of my ACA exams at the first attempt while studying at a Big Four firm. And after my time at the Big Four, I transitioned into a career within investment banking, and I now spend my days helping current ACA candidates ace their ACA exams. And today we're going to discuss some tips and some advice to help you guys pass the professional level Financial Accounting and Reporting exam. Financial Accounting and Reporting, also known as FAR, is definitely one of the trickiest exams you're going to face on your ACA journey. It's an incredibly technical exam and it's going to be pretty demanding and you're going to have to put a lot of work in. But what I would say is that it's definitely perceived as being one of the major milestones to getting the ACA qualification. Once you pass the FAR exam, you'll definitely pass the worst of the accounting exams that you face on the qualification. All of the accounting focused exams that you have after FAR are definitely more straightforward. From my experience, people that pass the FAR exam typically go on to achieve the ACA qualification. Those candidates that fail FAR multiple times typically do drop away and pursue a career change and leave the ACA qualification behind. So do take confidence in the fact that once you do get through this exam and you do pass it, you're really on your way to achieving the ACA qualification. Now, I've got to be completely honest, FAR is a very, very challenging exam. I remember when I studied it, the first few weeks of the study phase, I had absolutely no idea what was going on. I was completely lost. The material is extremely challenging, technical, and pretty overwhelming. When I was studying, I had no other accounting qualification. I had no background in accounting, and I'd only studied the certificate level accounting exam for about a week. So my accounting knowledge was pretty limited. So don't worry if you're feeling that way. It's completely normal to feel overwhelmed and feel like you're going to fail this exam. But by following the tips that I'm going to run through in this video, I managed to pass the exam. I got around 90% in the actual FAR exam. So I'm hoping some of the tips and strategies that I run through in this video will help you get through the exam as well. So yeah, let's get started. So my first tip when it comes to doing well in the FAR exam is by far and away the most important one. You need to manage your time carefully in the real exam. When you step into the exam and you open the exam paper, you're going to be presented with 4 questions, and those 4 questions are going to have marks attached to them. Now, the first thing you need to do when you open that exam paper is calculate the amount of time that you have to answer each of those 4 questions. Literally just get your scrap paper and scribble out how much time you've got to answer each of the 4 questions. So it may be 45 minutes for question 1, 50 minutes for question 2, but this is the first thing you need to do as soon as you open the paper, to make sure you're completely clear on how much time you have to address each of the problems. The main reason why candidates fail FAR is because they run out of time. Please don't fall into this camp. You must answer all of the questions within FAR to pass the exam. If you run out of time and you fail to answer a question or half a question, your probability of failing increases dramatically. You have to finish this exam. Give yourself the time to answer every single question and every single requirement in this exam. If you miss out a question, you will fail. If you miss out a requirement, you will increase your probability of failing dramatically. What candidates often fail to realize when they're answering questions in the FAR exam is that there are so many easy marks to pick up on each of the questions. What candidates often do is they focus on trying to maximize the amount of marks they can possibly get on question 1, for example, rather than moving on to question 2, question 3, and question 4. And this is one of the main reasons why candidates fail FAR, so please don't do this. Once your time allocation for question 1 that you've written down on your scrap piece of paper is up, then move on straight away. It doesn't matter if you've not got down every single point that you wanted to get down for question 1, you have to move on to question 2 because there are so many easy marks to pick up on question 2, question 3, and question 4 that you'll miss out on if you fail to get to those questions because you're so focused on maximizing your marks on the earlier questions. Like I said, map out your times as soon as you get into the exam room and stick to those time allocations strictly. As soon as your time is up for each question, you have to move on straight away. Don't spend any more time on that question. You have to move on straight away. If you stick to your time allocations and you answer all of the questions within the FAR exam, even if you're not an expert, even if you're not confident with the material, I do really strongly believe that you will pass this exam. This exam is not about how much you know, it's about exam technique, and failing to answer all of the questions is the key reason behind why candidates fail this exam. My second tip when it comes to doing well in the FAR exam is to learn the pro formas for the income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow statement. And by pro formas, I mean the structure of the financial statements without any numbers in it. So what are all the line items that go in the income statement, the balance sheet, and cash flow statement? You need to learn that off by heart. So for example, in a balance sheet, you'll have items like PPE, intangibles, inventory, receivables, and cash on the asset side. And you also have your sources of funding, such as equity and liability accounts. You need to know all of the items that could possibly go into a balance sheet off by heart. And that's the same for the income statement as well, and the cash flow statement. You need to know the structure of all three of the major financial statements off by heart before you walk into the FAR exam. And the reason why I suggest this is because those three financial statements are obviously going to come up and be tested in this exam. The income statement and the balance sheet specifically are 100% going to be tested. You're going to get a question asking you to produce an income statement or a balance sheet. That's just guaranteed. You're going to have to prepare either an income statement or a balance sheet or both from scratch. So learning exactly what goes into those financial statements is essential, because you don't want to waste any time in the exam having to think about and try and recall what goes in. It needs to be automatic. The time pressures in this exam are so high that you don't want to waste any time having to think about what goes in your balance sheet, what goes in your income statement. If you can reproduce an income statement and a balance sheet like it's second nature, not only will this save time in the exam, it will free up your time to address some of the more technical points in the exam. And then building on my second piece of advice, my third tip to doing well in the FAR exam is to completely forget and disregard the presentation mark. So in the FAR exam, for each of the 4 questions, you will get a presentation mark if you produce your financial statement perfectly. To get the presentation mark, everything needs to be written out in full, formatted exactly how you would expect a financial statement to be produced in a listed company's financial report. If you abbreviate one thing, like I said, like right, property, plant and equipment is PPE, that's the presentation mark gone. It's such a fickle mark, you can lose it so quickly and so easily. So my advice is to just completely forget about it, because it's a waste of time. The time you save not pursuing the presentation mark can be used to accumulate marks elsewhere. It really does take time to get the presentation mark, and I strongly suggest that you don't go after it, because the time you save from forgetting about it will free up time for you to get marks elsewhere. A lot of candidates that I speak to must be perfectionists, because they can't seem to want to forego the presentation mark, because it feels like quite an easy mark, right? All you've got to do is write out a financial statement. How hard can that be? But it just takes a while to do. It can take 5 to 10 minutes. And like I said, it's so easy to make one little mistake and make a spelling error or abbreviate something by accident when you're under pressure, and then you've lost it and you've wasted time. It's not worth wasting the time that you could spend actually answering the question, pursuing the presentation mark. So my personal advice is to leave the presentation mark behind and just get on with the question. My fourth piece of advice to doing well in the financial accounting and reporting exam is to focus on the key topic areas in the workbook. Do not waste unnecessary amounts of time worrying about the little niche topics that come up in the workbook. Focus in on the key topic areas that are tested time and time again in the question bank and in mock exams. To pass this exam, you need to get 55%, which is just over half. So clearly you don't need to know everything in the syllabus. You don't need to know all the peripheral areas of the curriculum. You just need to know the key topic areas really, really well. So don't worry about knowing everything in the syllabus. Just focus in on those areas that are tested time and time again. Property, plant and equipment, depreciation, consolidation accounting, producing balance sheets, income statements, cash flow statements, processing adjustments. The question bank is going to basically inform you as to what's going to come up in the exam, because the topic areas that are tested a lot in the question bank are naturally going to be tested in the exam. You may get questions in the exam that focus on the more technical niche points within the workbook, but they're going to be few and far between. The core areas are what are going to be tested predominantly. And like I said, you don't need to know everything in the syllabus. So if something does come up in the exam that you don't recognise or you're not familiar with, don't worry about it. Don't let it stress you out, and don't let it throw off your momentum in the real exam. You only need to get 55%. So if you lose out on a couple of marks in the exam because you don't know something, that's fine. You're still going to pass. You just need to get everything in the core areas correct. My fifth piece of advice to doing well in the FAR exam, and something that really helped me get to grips with the material, is understanding journal entries. Understand how journal entries work and understand the different journal entries that you need to post for all the different types of adjustments that you could be asked to tackle in the FAR exam. So for example, when you need to revalue property, plant and equipment, you need to debit the property, plant and equipment account because the asset is increasing, and you need to credit the revaluation surplus and capital because you're revaluing the property upwards. This is what I mean by journal entry, the debit and the credit. Getting to grips with journal entries really helped me understand all of the different concepts in the material. The fact that when there's an accounting adjustment, there's always a debit and a credit entry, i.e. two sides to every adjustment, really helped me address some of the bigger long form questions where you needed to produce a balance sheet or an income statement. You even get it sometimes in an exam question where you're asked to process an adjustment, and then as a sub-requirement, you're asked to write down the journal entries associated with that adjustment. So not only is it helpful from a technical aspect to understand journal entries, how they work, but you can also be asked on exam day to write down the journal entries that are attached to an adjustment. So I definitely recommend getting to grips with journal entries early. I think it will really help you get to grips with the material. My final piece of advice when it comes to doing well in the FAR exam is to know the difference in accounting treatments between IFRS and UK GAAP. This is just an exercise in rote learning. There will be a section at the end of each chapter of the workbook which discusses the differences in accounting treatment between IFRS and UK GAAP for the topic you've just studied. The workbook will clearly set out the key differences between the two accounting frameworks for each of the topics within the curriculum, and you just have to learn these differences. You have to get your pen and paper out and just rote learn what the differences are. You need to commit these differences to memory. It's a bit of a pain and it's a bit boring to just rote learn the differences, but that's what you've got to do. There's no other way around it. It's always tested in the exam on exam day. You'll always get a question worth 4 or 5 marks where you'll be asked for, I don't know, what are the differences between IFRS and UK GAAP when it comes to depreciation, and you'll need to list out 3 or 4 differences to accumulate the marks. It's a bit of a pain, but if you're struggling with the broader syllabus and you're a bit unsure as to whether you're going to get 55% on exam day, then maybe this is an area worth focusing on. A lot of candidates neglect it and don't look at it because it's quite dull and quite boring to do. But if you want to get 4 to 5 easy marks by doing something that's a bit challenging, then definitely learn the key differences. I would spend a day or 2 before the exam just writing out all of the differences from the workbook and committing them to memory because it will definitely come up in the exam. So that's my advice for the financial accounting and reporting exam. Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully you now feel a bit more prepared going into the exam on exam day. My concluding thoughts are: don't stress about the small areas within the syllabus. Focus on the key topic areas that come up time and time again, because you don't need to know everything in the workbook to pass this exam. The workbook is like 400, 500, 600 pages. So you don't need to know all that to do well here. But you do need to be confident and competent with the core areas because they do come up, they will be worth a lot of the marks. And if you can't pick up marks on those areas, it is going to be a challenge to pass the paper. If you're in the exam and you don't know something, you don't know the answer to a question or a sub-requirement, just move on. You don't have to know everything in this exam to pass, but you do have to be able to manage and negotiate the time pressures that you're faced with. So don't worry about not knowing every small little detail. People that pass this exam don't know everything about the syllabus. They don't know everything about accounting and about the FAR material. They're just very good at managing their time within the exam. Doing well here is not about being an expert in accounting. It's about exam technique. That's the key takeaway. Exam technique is everything, so do a lot of mocks under timed exam conditions where you get used to the time pressures and work within the time boundaries that you set yourself. Write out your time allocations before you walk into the exam and stick to them. Whatever you do, as soon as you get to the end of your time allocation for a question, stop there, put the pen down, and move on to the next question within the paper. It's the people who are really, really strict with their time management that ace this exam. These are the people that do really well. The people that struggle to manage their time within the FAR exam are the people that fail. So I hope the video was helpful. I hope you feel like you've got a lot of actionable advice that you can apply to your studying and your revision, and you've got some helpful pointers for how to attack the exam, both from a time management perspective, but also from a technical perspective as well. If you like the video, please smash the like button and consider subscribing. I'm making tons of videos about the ACA and the qualification as a whole and how to pass each of the exams. And I'm also making courses for each of the 15 papers as well. So if you want to come along for this journey, it'll be great to have you on board. And if you've got the exam coming up, I wish you the best of luck for it. You're going to absolutely smash it. And I'll see you guys in the next video.